Before we start, viewer discretion is strongly advised. What you're about to hear is based on federal courtroom testimony from the Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. This story is told for educational and entertainment purposes only. The courtroom had been tense, but still, everyone thought it would just be another procedural day, more paperwork, more technical jargon. But that illusion shattered when a single video began to play. At first, it looked like any home security feed, grainy, routine. But then the silence in the courtroom deepened. People leaned forward, eyes locked in, because there he was, Diddy, walking barefoot through Kim Porter's hallway at exactly 2:11 a.m., just days before she was found dead. The footage showed him slowly creeping down the dimly lit corridor, calm, barefoot, focused. He reached her bedroom door and gently pushed it open. Inside, Kim appeared to be sleeping. Then, black screen. Just like that, the footage cut to static. No explanation, no follow-up, just silence. Prosecutors claimed the system had been tampered with. The last text Kim ever sent warned she was being watched. And now, with this video finally playing before a jury, the question wasn't just, why was Diddy there? It was, what happened after the cameras went dark? That day in court, day 10, was expected to be forgettable. Experts, motions, nothing flashy. But at 2:07 p.m., everything changed. The lead prosecutor stood and asked to unseal a piece of evidence that had been locked away until now. Even Diddy's own legal team seemed rattled. The judge gave the go-ahead. 2 large monitors were rolled into place. The lights were dimmed. The jury straightened in their seats. And then it started. The footage was black and white, low resolution, time-stamped November 13th, 2018, 3 days before Kim Porter was found dead in her Toluca Lake home. The hallway camera caught a man moving slowly, wearing a hoodie, no shoes. The moment he came into full view, the courtroom gasped. It was Diddy, calm, steady. No signs of stress, no attempt to hide his identity. He wasn't there by mistake. He knew exactly where he was going. He made it to Kim's bedroom door. Didn't knock, didn't announce himself. He simply turned the knob and slipped inside, and then static. A full 12 seconds of black screen. The feed dropped. No audio, no backup footage. When the signal returned, the door was shut. The hallway was empty. Diddy was gone. The courtroom fell into a chilling stillness. Jurors didn't speak. They barely breathed. Reporters didn't dare look down at their notebooks. Diddy leaned forward, whispering to his lawyer, clearly shaken. And then the prosecutor let the silence hang heavy in the air before saying calmly, "Ladies and gentlemen, this was recorded 3 nights before Ms. Porter was found dead in that house. The footage was real, verified, time-stamped, until this moment, it had been sealed due to custody protocol. But now, everyone in that room had seen it, felt it, and there was no going back. Suddenly, this wasn't about rumors. It wasn't about tabloids or accusations. This was about what was caught on camera and what wasn't. Before they even played the tape, the prosecution made sure the jury understood the gravity. Kim Porter wasn't just Diddy's ex. She was the mother of his children, a woman he had been close to for nearly 20 years, but behind closed doors, she was something more, someone who may have known too much. She had been part of his inner circle from the very beginning. Private jets, industry parties, high-profile deals, and toward the end of her life, friends said Kim had changed. She was anxious, on edge, paranoid even. One friend recalled Kim saying, "If I ever tell the full story, none of them survive." Then came the journal entries, handwritten notes dated October 2018. In one, she wrote, "They think I'll stay quiet forever, but I'm tired. If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident." The court also heard from a journalist Kim had been speaking to, an investigative reporter who testified in a sealed deposition that Kim was preparing to go public. She had evidence, names, documents, NDAs, details from years of behind the scenes. Secrets, text messages backed this up. Kim had reached out to a lawyer. She wanted to write a memoir. She said she didn't want revenge, just the truth out before it was too late. The prosecutors painted a new picture. Kim wasn't just another voice. She was a threat, a liability. And when you're that close to someone with that much power, Being a liability can be deadly, but it wasn't just the footage that disturbed the court. It was the timing, the plans she had to speak out, the words she had written, the fact that 3 days later she was found lifeless in the very room Diddy had entered. The footage was now more than just a video. It was the beginning of a chilling timeline, and the jury knew it. You could see it in their faces. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. It wasn't speculation. It was real, and whatever happened that night, it wasn't just a mistake. As the courtroom tried to collect itself from the bombshell surveillance footage, the attention turned to one detail that shook everyone the most. Those missing 12 seconds, that deliberate blackout, that cold, calculated interruption. Prosecutors wasted no time. They brought in a digital forensics expert, a specialist in residential surveillance systems, and from the moment he took the stand, the air in the room shifted. His words were sharp, direct, unshakable. This wasn't a system glitch, it was a manual override. He showed back-end logs, real-time entries from the night of Kim Porter's death. According to the logs, someone accessed the surveillance system remotely at exactly 2:14 a.m., the moment the camera glitched out. But it wasn't just any access. It required root credentials, the highest level of clearance, the type of access, reserved only for a few. When the defense tried to suggest that maybe it was a software update or random malfunction, the expert cut through that theory with one statement. The last update was 2 weeks before. The system ran uninterrupted for over 60 days. This was intentional, this was surgical. And then came the most chilling twist yet. A security consultant, one of the original techs who had installed Kim's security system, testified under oath. He confirmed that only 3 people had access to that level of control: Kim Porter, her lead security officer, and Sean Diddy Combs. Gasps filled the room, because suddenly it wasn't just about access, it was about elimination. The footage didn't vanish by accident, it was shut off. Someone didn't want that moment recorded, and only 3 people could have made it happen. One of them was the woman found dead, the second was her employee, and the third was sitting at the defense table. The prosecutor looked right at Diddy and didn't flinch. "Mr. Combs," he asked quietly, "do you remember what happened during those 12 seconds? Because the system doesn't." Diddy didn't speak. He didn't even blink. But the tension in his jaw, the sudden stillness in his hands, the way he leaned closer to his lawyer, it was written all over him. He felt the weight of it. Everyone did. The jury was no longer just watching a man accused of intimidation and secrecy. They were staring at someone tied directly to digital evidence, evidence that disappeared at the most critical moment of Kim Porter's final hours. And then the prosecution took it even further. They held up a still frame, an enhanced image pulled from the footage just before the blackout. It was Diddy looking directly at the camera, not with fear, not with confusion, with control. His face half lit, eyes sharp. He knew the camera was there, and he looked right into it. "This is not a man caught by surprise," the prosecutor said, turning the image toward the jury. "This is a man who expected to be invisible." And in that instant, it wasn't just the footage that spoke. It was the silence, that unbearable pause between frames, those 12 seconds that everyone knew were missing, but couldn't unsee. Inside the courtroom, reporters were scribbling furiously. Sketch artists tried to capture Diddy's hands, tight on the table, knuckles white. For the first time since the trial began, he looked rattled, shaken, human, and the public, social media, exploded. No video was allowed to leave the courtroom, but the descriptions alone had hashtags trending within minutes. The blackout, Diddy trial, justice for Kim. Everyone was watching now, and just when the court thought it had seen the worst of it, prosecutors introduced Kim Porter's final texts. Over 40 messages, all sent in the span of 4 days. Messages to friends, to a journalist, to her lawyer. One read, "He was here again last night. I didn't see him, but I heard someone in the hall. Cameras didn't pick it up. It's like he knows when they're off." Another came just 48 hours before her death. If I'm gone, please tell the truth. I'm done covering for him. Let that sink in. She knew she was being watched. She felt it, lived it, and yet no one could stop what was coming. But the one that truly broke the jury was the last text she ever sent. 10 a.m., 1 minute before Diddy entered the hallway. She wrote to her cousin, "I think he's in the house. It was never opened. She was never seen alive again." What do you think happened during those 12 seconds? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Just when it felt like the courtroom had already seen the worst, like the silence, the blackout, and Kim's final text were the most damning blows, the prosecution unleashed something even heavier, because now they were challenging not just the surveillance or the digital traces. They were challenging the cause of death itself. They brought in a new expert. Not some tabloid physician or celebrity pathologist. No, this was Dr. Helen Mahoney, a forensic pathologist with over 2 decades of experience, including high-profile reviews and contested autopsies. She had no ties to the media, no agenda, just science, cold, factual, and devastating, and what she revealed sent a chill through the entire room. Let's rewind for a second. Kim Porter's official cause of death, as listed back in 2018, was lobar pneumonia. A lung infection, sudden, yes, but not unheard of. That's what the world was told. That's what her death certificate said. But according to Dr. Mahoney, something didn't line up. In fact, multiple things didn't. She began by explaining what pneumonia typically looks like in a healthy adult woman. There's a buildup, coughing, fatigue, shortness of breath, fever, and there's a timeline. A window of visible symptoms before things turn fatal. But Kim Porter had none of that. She had no respiratory complaints, no fever, no distress, not according to her family, not according to her staff, Mahoney told the jury, and not according to the medical screenings she passed just weeks before. And then it got darker. Mahoney pointed to her toxicology findings. Kim Porter's system had elevated levels of sedative compounds, medications typically used for deep sleep or preoperative sedation. Not unusual in trace amounts, but the levels found in Kim, they were off the charts. These aren't the levels we see in someone taking a pill to fall asleep, Mahoney clarified. These are levels seen in surgical prep or in forced sedation. The gallery audibly gasped. Diddy's lawyers immediately jumped in, objecting. They called it speculative, called it misleading, but the judge overruled them because the facts were undeniable. Kim had no prescription for such sedatives. She had never reported taking them regularly. And yet, in the final hours of her life, they were surging through her system. But what rocked the courtroom even more, there had been a second toxicology panel requested, a more comprehensive one, the kind that could have identified even more substances, things like rare compounds, tranquilizers, or harder-to-detect drugs. That second panel, it was blocked, cancelled, shut down, within 24 hours of her body being found. Dr. Mahoney testified that request was logged, then withdrawn. No reason given, and it happened before the public even knew she had passed. That's not standard, that's suspicious. So let's get this straight. A healthy woman with no visible signs of illness dies suddenly. Her autopsy lists pneumonia, but her lungs show no consistent signs of infection. Her body shows signs of chemical sedation, and the one test that might have confirmed or denied foul play, blocked. And you expect the jury to shrug this off? Absolutely not. By now, jurors weren't just paying attention, they were locked in. One woman visibly teared up. 2 others leaned forward, arms crossed, brows furrowed. They were connecting the dots. And this wasn't just a coincidence anymore. Then Dr. Mahoney dropped the final blow. "No, I cannot confirm that Kim Porter was murdered," she said carefully. "But based on what I've seen, she didn't just die. She was erased." That word, erased, echoed like a gunshot in the courtroom. You could hear a pin drop. Reporters typed in all caps. Artists froze mid-sketch. Even Diddy looked shaken. His once polished demeanor was cracking, eyebrows low, breathing sharp, jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscle flex across the room. This wasn't a PR scandal. This wasn't a tabloid feud. This was a courtroom filled with documented lies, missing footage, unexplained chemicals, and a timeline that screamed manipulation. And the prosecution wasn't done yet. They introduced the final piece of Phase 3, Kim Porter's blocked toxicology request, a document trail showing when the extra panel was requested and the exact timestamp when it was withdrawn, right before her funeral, right before the media storm hit, right before it could become a headline. They let the paperwork sit on the screen, big, bold, time-stamped, and then they asked the jury one question. Why would anyone want to cancel this test unless they were afraid of what it would find? Let's be honest, by this point you don't need the court to tell you something's wrong. You feel it. What do you think really happened to Kim Porter? Was it just pneumonia or something far more sinister? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I'm reading every single one. Just when the courtroom thought it had heard everything, just when the jury was still trying to process the eerie footage, the sedative levels, the blocked toxicology, prosecutors revealed something no one saw coming, something that didn't come from a camera or a lab or a doctor. It came from Kim Porter herself, and it hit like a hammer. It was an email draft, never sent, never addressed, just sitting in her cloud backup folder, titled in all caps, "What I Know About Puff." The timestamp? November 11th, 2018, 2 days before the security footage caught Diddy creeping barefoot into her hallway. 3 days before Kim Porter was found dead in her bedroom. The jury watched as the words were slowly read out loud. The courtroom went so quiet, you could hear the hum of the AC. Every syllable felt like a pulse, every sentence like a heartbeat Kim had left behind. Not for drama, not for revenge, but for protection. The opening line alone made one juror audibly gasp. This is the truth. I'm tired of carrying it, tired of being quiet while people hurt others and get away with it. I'm scared, but I'm done being scared. This wasn't a diary. This wasn't speculation. This was Kim Porter documenting what she believed would be the end of her silence and possibly her life. She wrote in full paragraphs, then broke off into bullet points. Each one read like a secret she'd been too afraid to say out loud. Names, dates, party locations, hotel bookings, hidden back rooms, private flights, mentions of NDAs, some signed willingly, others under pressure. She detailed celebrity guests who went into those spaces and never came back the same. She mentioned one woman who cried through an entire private jet ride after a weekend in Diddy's compound. She described gatherings with symbolic rituals, hushed voices, and emotional breakdowns that were reframed as spiritual awakenings. And the sickest part, she warned this was all protected, that Diddy didn't just rely on lawyers or PR. He used to say, "No one will believe you. I own the narrative. I am the story." Those words weren't metaphorical. That was a direct quote. Kim wrote it out clearly. And then right after that, "For a long time I believed him, but now I want people to know. I tried. I spoke up. I put it in writing. And if I end up gone, I didn't go willingly." That line, that's when the courtroom cracked. A woman in the gallery wept. A courtroom sketch artist froze mid-stroke, his pen hovering over the paper. Even one of Diddy's own lawyers looked down, eyes unmoving, as if they couldn't explain this away. Because how do you argue against a woman predicting her own death? The prosecution let the words settle, then turned to the jury. They didn't say much. They didn't have to. All they said was this: "Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just a document. It's a confession, and not from the defendant, from the victim." It was devastating, but the prosecutors weren't done. They pulled up metadata from the email draft, verified the timestamp, confirmed it was written on Kim's personal laptop, synced to her cloud on the night of November 11th. No tampering, no forgeries. This was her voice, in her own digital handwriting, captured before she died. They even showed the revision history. Kim had opened and edited the draft multiple times over 2 days, adding more details, rewriting lines as if she was working up the courage to finally send it. But she never did. Why? That's the question the entire courtroom silently asked, and the answer sat heavy in the room. Maybe she didn't get the chance. Maybe she was stopped. At this point, Diddy looked broken, his confidence gone, his posture sagged. He wasn't whispering to his lawyers anymore. He was just staring. What stood out most was how the email reframed everything the jury had seen. The video. Now it wasn't just creepy, it was calculated. The blackout, no longer just a tech glitch, it was a cover-up. The sedatives, no longer questionable, they were intentional. And Kim's words, they weren't random ramblings. They were a farewell, a coded scream from a woman who knew the walls were closing in. But before ending the day, the prosecution posed one final question to the jury, and it wasn't rhetorical. If someone tells you in writing that they're scared, that they're being watched, that they might be erased, and then days later they're gone, what would you call that? And now I have to ask you too, because this is bigger than one courtroom. What would you call that? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading every single one. This story isn't over. It's just beginning. The day after Kim Porter's draft email was read aloud in court, the energy in the courtroom felt different, heavier, like the trial had finally broken through its own performance and now stood face to face with something raw, something irreversible. The gallery was quieter. Reporters, normally buzzing, spoke in whispers. Even the security guards looked like they were bracing for something bigger. And then it came, because the ripple effects of that email didn't stop at the courthouse doors. Within 24 hours of the testimony, 3 major news outlets, CNN, Rolling Stone, and The Guardian, ran nearly identical headlines. Industry secrets emerge in Kim Porter's draft email. Who's next? Suddenly, this wasn't just a trial, it was a reckoning, and the list of people potentially involved wasn't just long, it was terrifyingly familiar. Diddy's team tried to do damage control. Their publicist released a statement insisting Kim's words were taken out of emotional context, that she struggled with personal stress and often dramatized her feelings. But it was too late. People weren't buying it, because it wasn't just what Kim said. It was when she said it, right before she died, and that silence she predicted in her final line, it was finally breaking. The very next day, the district attorney's office confirmed it. 8 subpoenas had been issued to individuals mentioned in Kim's unsent email. They didn't name names, but the courtroom didn't need them to. The whispers began circling. A retired producer, a current reality TV mogul, a famous R&B singer who disappeared from the spotlight, and a former assistant who had fled to Europe years ago. Each of them had one thing in common: Diddy's inner circle. Then came the real shocker. A former dancer who had previously refused to testify suddenly showed up at the courthouse, accompanied by legal counsel. According to her lawyer, Kim Porter's email gave her the courage to come forward. She didn't speak to reporters. She didn't say anything at all, but she didn't have to. The message was clear. Kim's silence was no longer holding anyone. Elsback and Diddy, he saw it. You could see it in his body language. He had come into this trial arrogant, composed, untouchable. But now he looked like a man trying to hold back a dam with his bare hands. At one point during the session, as the prosecution discussed Kim's timeline again, Diddy leaned forward, elbows on the table, both hands clasped tight in front of his mouth, like he was praying. But this wasn't a prayer of innocence. This was survival. The prosecution played the voicemail again, the one Kim left on her lawyer's phone. He's back. I heard the gate. I locked my door. I'm scared. This time they didn't just let it play. They followed it up with a still frame of Diddy's face, the one taken just seconds before he entered Kim's bedroom. And then they did something bold. They put both images side by side, Kim's trembling voice on one screen, Diddy's cold stare on the other. The contrast said it all. And I want to ask you something, because it's not just about guilt or innocence anymore. If the person you feared most showed up at your home, uninvited, unannounced, and then hours later you were gone, would the world call that a coincidence? Let me know what you think, because this conversation isn't ending in that courtroom. It's just getting louder online. And yes, I'm reading every single comment, but even beyond public reaction, what happened next shook the entire industry to its core. One of Diddy's former business partners was detained at LAX, attempting to board a private flight. Destination? Dubai. No arrest. Not yet, but officials confirmed the man was carrying a laptop, 3 encrypted USB drives, and a manila envelope labeled simply Archives. You can't make this stuff up. And back inside the courtroom, Diddy's own team looked scattered. His lead attorney, who had once smirked through most of the trial, now whispered urgently during every break, eyes darting, clearly strategizing. Damage control on the fly, and while all this chaos swirled around him, Diddy just sat there, stone-faced. No smiles, no nods. The prosecutor closed the day with a single quote from Kim's unsent email: "He doesn't need consent, he needs control," and then looked directly at the jury and said, "That is what this case is about, not allegations, not rumors, control," and Kim Porter died trying to escape it. The room was silent again. No one moved, and this time, even Diddy didn't look up. So tell me, what would you do if you were on that jury right now? Would Kim's voice be enough? Or would you need more? Let's talk about it, because silence is no longer an option.